Picture this. It's December 20, 1968. You're out on Lake Herman Road in Vallejo, California. Two teenagers are parked in a gravel pull-off, expecting nothing more than a quiet, totally normal evening. But instead, they became the very first known victims of a psychological terrorist who would fundamentally change how America views serial crime. This isn't just your standard true crime story about a shadowy figure in the dark. It's really the analytical starting point of a case that completely exposed the fragility of police jurisdictions and introduced an entirely new breed of killer, one who quite literally weaponized the public's fear.
Okay, let's dive into this explainer, the Zodiac Killer: Anatomy of an Unsolved Mystery. We're looking at a case that completely, undeniably redefined modern criminology. Rather than just recounting a sad series of attacks, we're going to unpack the intense psychological manipulation and the systemic failures that allowed this guy to just constantly slip through the cracks. We'll break down his exact methodology, how he practically played the media like a fiddle, and why, despite decades of intense scrutiny and all our modern forensic science, the definitive answers are still just out of reach. Section 1. The night that started it. So, between 1968 and 1969, a chillingly clear pattern emerged. We're talking about the systematic targeting of young couples on these really remote Northern California roads. But right out of the gate, investigators hit a massive hurdle. You see, some of the victims, like Mike Majo and Brian Hartnell, actually survived these brutal attacks. Now, normally, you'd think, great, surviving witnesses, they're going to break this case wide open, right? Well, from a criminological standpoint, the descriptions they provided were almost worse than having no witnesses at all. They described the attacker as having a completely ordinary appearance. It really highlights the terrifying banality of evil. He just looks like a regular guy you'd pass on the street. Because he didn't fit into any extreme recognizable profile, profiling him became nearly impossible, and these incredibly varying descriptions just led to dead end after dead end.
Section 2. Taunting through the press.
Most criminals do literally everything in their power to stay anonymous, right? Well, not this guy. He actively, desperately craved the spotlight. He actually mailed these handwritten letters directly to newspapers, openly claiming responsibility and demanding front page coverage. And to emphatically prove he wasn't just some random prankster looking for attention, he provided these hyper-specific details that only the true killer could possibly know. In one of his absolute most chilling moves, he actually mailed a blood-stained piece of victim Paul Stein's shirt directly to the San Francisco Chronicle. No way to deny that. It was undeniable, physical proof of identity that effectively forced the media, and by extension us, the public, to play his twisted game.
Now, what's really interesting about this is the unique tool he used to elevate his psychological warfare. It was the cryptogram. He didn't just write boastful letters. He sent these incredibly complex ciphers, filled with coded messages, explicit threats, and bizarre symbols. By crowdsourcing a puzzle like this, he essentially created mass hysteria. He wasn't just communicating with the police anymore. He was actively challenging the everyday citizen to solve his codes, turning the entire population of Northern California into unwilling participants. He was effectively terrorizing a whole city all at once.
Section 3. A deadly shift in tactics. For over a year, the pattern was pretty predictable. Isolated couples, remote, pitch-black roads. But then, in October 1969, the rules drastically changed. The victim this time was Paul Stein, a lone taxi driver. And the location? It wasn't some rural highway. It was Presidio Heights, a busy, well-lit residential area right in the heart of San Francisco. Striking in the middle of a dense city and just vanishing into the night? That was a brazen escalation. It absolutely proved he wasn't confined to just one single method, victim profile, or environment.
Because he struck in such a busy neighborhood, the police response was immediate. Responding officers were practically on top of him just minutes after the murder. However, a fateful misunderstanding during the initial radio dispatch completely changed the course of the entire investigation. The dispatcher mistakenly identified the suspect as a black male instead of a white male. And because of this single catastrophic communication error, two responding officers actually saw a white man walking away from the crime scene, and they let him go. Just let him walk right past, all because he didn't match the broadcast description. To this day, it remains one of the absolute most agonizing what-ifs in criminal history.
Section 4. Chasing ghosts and suspects. Let's move to and see how this builds over the decades. Following that Presidio Heights attack, the letters and the codes, they kept coming. But the physical trail, it went completely cold for over 50 years. Much of that time was spent agonizing over his absolute most infamous puzzle, the 340 cipher. It sat there completely unsolved until an incredible breakthrough in 2020, when a team of independent codebreakers finally cracked it. The message inside revealed his incredibly twisted mindset, stating, "I hope you are having lots of fun in trying to catch me." But the tragic irony of it all? After half a century of waiting, the solution yielded no names, no identity, nothing.
Naturally, this massive void of a confirmed identity has been filled with dozens and dozens of suspects over the decades. And one of the most heavily scrutinized was a man named Arthur Lee Allen. Now, from an analytical standpoint, it's super easy to see why Allen was the prime suspect. I mean, he wore a Zodiac brand watch, he perfectly matched the physical descriptions, and circumstantial evidence frequently placed him right in the vicinity of the crimes. But, as we know, the justice system requires a lot more than just strong suspicion. Despite years of intense focus, investigators could never, not once, match his DNA, his handwriting, or his fingerprints to the crime scenes. It just led to a frustrating, permanent legal gridlock.
Section 5. The unending modern investigation.
So the crucial point is that this case isn't just some dusty relic of the 1960s. Detectives today are actively applying advanced DNA analysis, incredibly sophisticated digital imaging, and cutting-edge fingerprint technology to that original evidence. The current holy grail for cold cases like this is investigative genetic genealogy. It's actually the exact same technique that finally caught the Golden State Killer. By mapping distant relatives through these massive DNA databases, law enforcement is really hoping to bridge the gap between historical evidence and modern technology. Even though, at least for now, the FBI still officially classifies this as an open, unsolved investigation.
Ultimately, the reason this specific case still totally grips us today is because it represents our absolute ultimate fear, the idea that complete anonymity allows real-life monsters to just hide in plain sight among us. It forces us to grapple with a pretty chilling reality. Was he just an ordinary man living a completely normal life, or did he continue his crimes under a different identity? Until that final, undeniable piece of DNA or solid proof emerges, the mystery remains, practically daring us to finally close the file on one of America's most elusive phantoms.